This is a quick deep dive into the Arrastra. Now that we have the information and it is for sale at its price point, we can talk about some of its capabilities. The video I have running in the background, I'll have pop-ups throughout it, detailing specifically things from the sale, and it's just something to watch. If you want to see my dive into this specific video you're watching in the background, check out my other video I'll put at the end of this one. So I have two Arrastra videos now. This specific ship is being hailed as the flagship deep space RSI mining vessel. And I think that that is trying to give you a hint that the Orion, which is a much larger ship and a much more involved ship and has a ton of haulers towing in tow behind it, following it around to support its operations, will be less than ideal unless you have just the largest of largest organizations in lawless or less than safe space. So this Arrastra is the largest mining vessel that we will probably see for a while that can meet that need. With that in mind, its weapon complement, enjoying 3 size 3 remote turrets, 4 size 4 missile systems that are pilot controlled as it notes, and 2 size 5 weapons, also pilot controlled, are very welcome. Additionally, it has 8 more size 1 missiles and 4 size 3 missiles that it does not note are pilot controlled. It is highly likely that there is a co-pilot seat or a weapons coordinator that handles those jobs. Usually it's a co-pilot seat that kind of does double duty if it's like other designs. Now, when it's not shooting at things, when it's doing its actual work, it has 3 remote mining lasers, as we've seen in this video that we're watching, and also, and noted specifically, 1 remote tractor beam. Now, on the pictures and in the images, it notes that the remote tractor beam is towards the back, which makes sense to operate and move things back and forth. And it's going to need it because it has 512 SCU of external storage racks kind of slung on its sides and possibly on the bottom, if you look in the pictures, and then only 64 SCU internal. This is important because that means that you don't have a lot of space tied up with the cargo, but you do have a lot of exposed cargo. So once those shields are broken, or if there's ballistic weapons firing upon this ship, a lot of those external storage racks are risked. So likely you would have ore or refined minerals. And why do I say refined minerals? Because it does, we have confirmed it has an onboard refinery. Want to also note that it has a size 3 radar on board and large 2 size 3 shields. Now, do note that this is on the newer design. There is a lot of ships that are going to be updated to the sizes and scales of this ship. So other large class vessels that are kind of dipping into this nearly quasi-cap design, if you don't count services, are going to be getting pretty impressive. So I take the size of the radar, shields, etc., a little cautiously, but I do feel that this thing has a reasonable amount of protection on board alongside its weapons, and especially if it has an escort it can enjoy, which it cannot support. There is no hangar on board, but it does have a vehicle bay on the back for ground vehicles, which can fit 2 small ROCs or other small vehicles. I put in the Q&A a question asking the devs if it can fit 1 medium class vehicle, because I believe that would add a nice bit of versatility. However, it is possible they intentionally don't want to make it tall enough or wide enough to fit a medium class vehicle. So if you're thinking of putting a Spartan in here or some other vehicle or a trailer with a vehicle in the future with a construction assembly, I think this thing's not going to be big enough, but we're going to test that, of course. Remember the old adage, if it fits, it sits, should fit here. So we'll see. But the only thing they are promising is that it can fit 2 small vehicles. So 2 Cyclones or 2 ROCs will fit comfortably. It does note that there is up to a crew of 5. However, I will note that, as we've spoken about, a crew of 4 is more ideal for this ship in my eyes, because you can fit all 4 people having something to do between the fights, between the mining operations up on that bridge. And that 5th person is kind of an odd person out. So they don't have a remote mining laser to play with. They don't have a pilot seat to sit in. So that's kind of, I guess, 1 person for engineering who would be expected to be at a station that may or may not be on the bridge. So we'll have to see. That person may be expected to be in the back. In the eyes of the developers, that might be seen as not a big deal because, 1 person can go lone back and work the refinery, And that kind of more independent person might be minded to be back there working on things, checking on what the tractor beam was doing in person, grabbing a hand tractor beam if needed to kind of finalize the locations of stuff placed, that kind of thing. Like basically working all the different parts of the ship that you can't do from the bridge that practically. That's entirely plausible. But at any rate, this is what we know right now at this moment. The ship is available on the RSI Pledge store for the next 2 days if you're watching this the weekend of the Astara launch. And the Arrastra, to me, is one of those bigger ships that is kind of a tentpole ship for the event. So when we think of these type of ships, we try to not think about them in a vacuum. And as I always encourage, please talk it over with your org mates, your friends, people that you find yourself flying with a lot, and consider these larger, more expensive vessels carefully into your lineup. So with that out of the way, at 575 USD for credit and for 525 war bond initial offerings, it makes itself wonderful fodder for the Hull C. A lot of people currently have a Hull C to kind of turn back to, and at a 500 value price point, the Hull C would be a very easy win to switch over to an Arrastra, especially if you have the credit to make the difference. A lot of people have maybe not seen happily what the Hull C has turned into, or maybe they just, had a little bit different expectations about what it could become when it first came out. So it makes sense that that ship would be less than ideal for them. What I don't recommend is upgrading from a Hull D to the Arrastra. I think the Hull D at 550 USD price point will grow again, at least 50 more USD or 75 USD. However, if you see yourself as, I don't want to wait, the Arrastra might be out next year, let's just roll with it, that makes sense. I respect that. I'm just trying to stress that that ship is probably less than ideal to upgrade from. The M2 Herc is another example of something that's prime fodder. It's 520 USD value right now, so jumping to the 575 of the Arrastra is not that big of an ask. However, the M2 has thicker armor. It can fit much larger vehicles, including tanks. And it can fit quite a lot of vehicles on board. Two to three Storms, for example, two Storms can comfortably fit. Three can squeeze in. You can do two Storms and a Ballista. You can do Novas and a Ballista. You can get some really interesting lineups in that M2 Herc, and then you still have a lot of crew quarters on top. And the chin turret to support its protecting, it's offloading if you just use the front doors. The M2 is quite a unique ship, especially with those jump seats for the vehicle crews. The Arrastra has none of that. It can carry two smaller vehicles, which is nice. It's nice to have some utility, but it's more of a dedicated mining vessel, not really a logistics vessel. So if you picked up the M2 for the reasons I describe, how if you have that image in your head of tanks and stuff, don't upgrade to the Arrastra just because it's new. Another ship that's in the same price point, interestingly, so it's not a CCU option, but it's just an interesting to note thing, is the Liberator. I just talked with Mason about this. The Liberator is a definite hold on to ship. Don't melt it just for the sake of the Arrastra. The Liberator can hold a tremendous amount of resources, plus 500 plus SCU. It can nearly meet the Arrastra's SCU, and it can do it interior. It can store it all inside, more protected. So yes, if you're into mining, it would be great, but it can only mine. The ships that are currently in that kind of classification in that same zone tend to be more multi-role jack of all trades, and I think they're great things. Another one I would not recommend going for is the 600i Explorer and the 600i Touring, which 600i Explorer is currently at 475 USD. 600i Touring is currently at 435 USD. Both of those when they become flyable on the updates. So they're flyable now, but they will get a pass that's long been pushed. When they finally get that, they're probably going to rise up 50 to 100 USD. So I would not recommend picking them up right now. Just wait it out another year, let it ride, and hopefully you'll have your updated 600Is and a nice big price bump. And the Arrastra is not worth that. I would say that if the Prowler at the 440 USD price point, I would say the Prowler is certainly fodder for the Arrastra. That ship is something that is going to take a long time to get right, and I've always felt it's overpriced. So I'm not against alien ships. I love my Defender, I love my BMM, but the Prowler is one of those ships that it's currently just in a weird place right now. So if you're even on the fence about it, do it. Get rid of it. And finally, just rounding this out, I'm going to skip the Reclaimer for obvious reasons. The Reclaimer's amazing, and it's well undervalued for what it's going to be eventually. I'm going to round this out with two other ones, the C2 and the Genesis. So at the Starliner and the Genesis are both at an interesting precipice right now. The Starliner is going to go up and up and up. Do not bother getting rid of it. The C2 Herc, though, is kind of maxed out on its capacities. So if you don't need to move large vehicles, if you don't see the value of it, if you want to get out of the purely civilianized ship that can kind of do vaguely military combat logistics, and you want to get more into making money with the said vessel of that size, it might be worth CCUing from a C2 to an Arrastra. That's up to you, because that ship really isn't getting any further along, and it's not quite stand out as it used to be, in my modest opinion. Take it what you will. And they're about the same in hauling capacity if you count the external Arrastra, which is, yes, less valuable because it's external, but still. And on to another topic, the Galaxy. The Galaxy held at 380 USD. There was no changes in where it stands because it's sitting at the 380 price point. I like where it is. The base Galaxy, as I remind everyone, this is just kind of a bonus thought because I don't have a whole lot to mention in this video about the Galaxy, but the Galaxy is in a position where even before the construction module, it greatly interests me. It's a modular ship that truly is modular in a nice sense of the word, where one of the biggest parts of the ship is the actual module. I highly recommend letting that ride. Don't get rid of your Galaxies. I do think that ship will gain in price, and its modules are going to grow in number, at the very least the construction module, which is going to be critical for outpost construction, especially if you don't have a Pioneer. So that's where I think I stand on RSI Day in general, and the Arrastra specifically is a unique ship that is purely all about the mining. And this was a quick video to kind of round out my first video. I kind of felt obligated because I did a preview video without the brand new ship literally sitting in front of us to review. Now we have a bit more information about the refinery, and that it can confirmed that can handle the amount of stuff that it's actually mining, and it can handle the vehicles in at least a certain way with the tractor beam. That was a big question mark for me, and it is what it is. For the record, just as a bonus thought, the Arrastra in general, I actually like the regular paint job on it. So the regular paint job is two-tone. It's a nice white and black kind of high contrast finish. Whereas the Arrastra Nocturne paint that is used for Concierge is jet black. And I'm not a big fan of that, honestly. But then again, maybe I'm biased. I like the two-tone coloration. I think it really came out nice on this ship. So it's kind of funny to note that in general. One passing thought is that the jet black one, if you turned all the lights off and you turned your IR and EM signatures down by turning off most of your ship systems, it might be a little more sneaky to hide inside the asteroid belt if you have enemies trying to stalk you. However, we will see how that actually develops, especially with new scanning tech on the horizon. It may not do very much at all, considering it's a large class ship. But who knows? Just a passing thought. All right. Happy IE. Fly safe.